Okay, I'd like to introduce you now to our third speaker, Kelli McKluskey. Kelli is an artist and a co-founder of PVI Collective. PVI produce interdisciplinary artworks that are intent on the creative disruption of everyday life, with the purpose to investigate or instigate tiny revolutions. Active as an artist in Australia, based in Perth, Kelli has toured projects internationally in Asia and Europe. She co-manages the artist-run initiative CIA Studios, which she kick-started in 2008. In 2011, she co-founded the annual Proximity Festival, Australia's first one-on-one performance festival. It's an introvert's nightmare, that one. She is on the board of the National Association for the Visual Arts, and in 2016 was awarded the Australia Council's Outstanding Achievement in Emerging and Experimental Arts. Thank you.
Hello, hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. So yes, I am artist and co-founder of a tactical media art group based in Perth called PVI. And PVI stands for Performance, Video and Intervention, which are the three main aspects of our practice. So I just wanted to give a brief bit of context to our work and then get on to the provocation that the Bureau has set for us. Yes, as Christopher mentioned, we do make playfully subversive, participatory artworks that aim to creatively disrupt everyday life in public spaces. So what we try to do is invite audiences to become active participants, exploring often difficult subjects like privacy, terrorism, consumerism, and disaster capitalism within immersive, intimate encounters in crowded streets. The city is our playground, and over the years, we have seen it become an increasingly contested space. Our works are often social duets between the audience and their city, aiming to question the extent to which our freedom of movement, speech and expression has been gradually eroded in public space, to the point where we would argue if it has any real legitimacy at all in contemporary society. The origins of the word public, meaning to belong to the people. Does it really? And what people do we mean? And we see our audiences not so much as art consumers or ticket-buying public, but as creative comrades. So through performance and gameplay, we seek out alternative solutions for an unstable future, aiming to not just make things, but to make things happen. For us, the ideas will always dictate the form, so we're not beholden to any particular art form as such, but we do employ game theory, performance, emerging and familiar technology like mobile phones, and lo-fi DIY tools to invite participation. Play is very much our weapon of choice, and we have found that it can be a very powerful tool that allows us to find moments of creative resistance, which enables our audiences to reconsider the socio-political realities of their surroundings in a new light. So this has led us to making sticker campaigns on how to steal cars, board games that invite you to transform your immediate surroundings in public parks, bus tours that look at how anti-terror legislation has altered our perceptions of safety, mobile phone apps that invite you to turn your city into a playground, radio broadcasts that you tune into via your car stereo whilst cruising the suburbs looking for antisocial behaviour, tug-of-war contests that ask if you're willing to champion a solution to an issue that has a community divided, and more recently an underground black market where you acquire survival skills that equip you to better cope with an impending global economic crash. Doesn't sound very cheerful, does it? So the topic we were asked to respond to, as Christopher and these guys have already touched on, was the relationship between art and politics, and how making art can critically engage with our lived realities, which is a huge question, and I don't think I've nailed my responses, so I'm sorry if these thoughts are a little bit fragmented. I guess my concern really does lie with how far artists feel able to go with that critical engagement in Australia, given the austerity economics that we're experiencing as a sector, as well as the global fucked upness of the world at the moment. I couldn't think of a better word. And what are the perceived and real consequences if we're seen to go too far? We are the only Western democratic country with neither a constitutional or federal legislative Bill of Rights to protect its citizens. So our freedom of expression is very much assumed, but not guaranteed. And I think that leaves us with this vast grey area of unknowns. I think what artists do and can do more of in Australia is to occupy these grey areas and uncertainties, attempt to agitate them and test their boundaries, intelligently, responsibly, and courageously. And the reason this is so crucial is that if we don't confront and explore them, then the danger is that it leads to a fear of the unknown, which can lead to caution, which can lead to a serious risk aversion mentality and assumption of legal or financial repercussions, which essentially is institutionalized self-censorship when you look at it through the lens of artistic freedom of expression. And it's happening all the time. When funding for the arts is cut, when a controversial work or artist gets hauled over the coals in the press with the byline of being a waste of taxpayers' money, when politicians cut creative programs in the education system due to them not being economically beneficial enough to society, when sedition laws are enacted preventing us from being critical of the actions of our governments, the list can go on. And I would argue that this all eats away at artists' capacity to critically engage and serves to neutralise our potential effectiveness. Some practical responses to this would mean asking, is there a robust defence structure to support artists' rights to create work that pushes boundaries and promotes a deeper consideration of controversial or difficult issues? And are we communicating the fundamental necessity for socially, politically agitational work to be out there in the world, generating debate? If the answer to both of those questions is no, then my concern is that we are destined to become so paralysed by potential reputational impact, loss of funding, loss of sponsorship, media backlash or political intervention that we're not even feeling able to dip our toes in that hot water. And that feels like a major problem. And I guess in response to the Bureau's provocation, it led me to really think about how we frame potentially contentious works as always being controversial and the negative associations applied to the word controversy. I think there's a fundamental positive value to controversy in the arts, which is not properly addressed by the arts sector or handled particularly well in this country. I wonder if we need to think about controversy not being a dirty word. If we were to frame it in a more positive light, as a social tool that provides an opportunity to reflect on where we're headed as a society, a tool that is necessary for social growth and collective renewal, then wouldn't we be better able to appreciate the inherent value in it and begin to foster a more critical citizenry? I'm a big believer in creative dissent and what it might look like in the future. And I was reading a book by Michael White, who was one of the founders of the Occupy movement, which was arguably, I guess, one of the strongest, most sophisticated, broad-reaching social movements of the past 50 years. And he gives this stinging commentary on the failure of collective action in his recent book, The End of Protest. He cites the Occupy movement's failed attempt to achieve a radical democracy through street-based spectacle as a wake-up call to break with the old nostalgic protest paradigms like marches, occupations and sit-ins, as they are already too deeply entrenched in the bureaucratic process. Want to protest? Get a protest permit, allocate a free speech zone, work with authorities to ensure public health and safety, get public liability insurance. These can all be seen as counter-tactics aimed at lessening impact, increasing the difficulty, and making events easier to ignore to enable us to get on with business as usual. So this for me is really where the artists can get their teeth stuck in. Because for me, critically engaged art can find ways to play with what frightens us, to deviate from form and from our expectations. And it doesn't have to be didactic, yawningly earnest, or overtly political. It can and should be inclusive, desirable, and from our perspective, playful and empowering, and operate with stealth. Sometimes I feel the more obviously political a work is, the less transformative power it has. So I'm all in favour of leaning towards playful mischievousness and participatory experiences, where you have to make your own choices and the consequences resonate with you on an intimate, personal level. But at the same time, you feel part of something bigger. You feel invested in the subject matter, at risk in it, and exhilarated by it all at once. You walk away from it wanting to talk about it or to do something in response. I love the slippery identity that creative dissent provides us and the impact that it can have. And I think we're going to need to deploy much, much more of it in the coming years. That's all I've got. Thank you very much.